I did a video on the risks of rent to rent, and loads of you posted in the comments, hit me up on Instagram saying you wanted a video exclusively on how to vet your HMO tenants. So here it is. So it's absolutely essential to get the vetting process done correctly, because if you do it wrong, what happens is you get your first deal, you get excited, you've got these 5 lettable rooms to let, and then bang, you pick the wrong tenant, it disrupts the house, okay? They might not pay rent, or they're a massive pain, or they're breaking the terms of the tenancy, and then you are left with not cash flow, but a massive headache. So I wanted to share with you the different options you've got to eliminate the risks. And when I say eliminate, let's be honest with you, there is no way of completely eliminating it. But what we can do is reduce the probability of bad tenants. And before I get into the value, I'll be honest with you, I've had some bad tenants, even with implementing some of these things. Some of my bad tenants were before I were implementing some of these things. And I'll also be honest with you, sometimes, I personally believe that following your gut with tenants and people in general is the best form of actually referencing tenants, because you'll get that feeling, but you need to make sure that we hit certain other parameters. So I have had bad tenants. I've had tenants that, where there's been issues, loud music at night, particularly around COVID. I had tenants that were struggling and maybe drinking a bit too much and this, that and the other, and disrupting the house because everybody was at home furloughed and it was a super tough time. Then I've had tenants that just simply don't pay rent. I've had tenants that have maybe, one day I've gone to the house or someone's gone to the house and they've just left with 6 months left on their tenancy. So it is an occupational hazard and you can't completely eliminate it, but there are ways to overcome it, okay? So let's get into the value. So first things first, before we even get to the point of tenant referencing and vetting and all that stuff, what I highly recommend is that you have a pre-viewing questionnaire. And this is a questionnaire that pre-qualifies the prospect to make sure that they're the right fit for us and the house and the existing tenants are the right fit for them. Because if it's not, that's the best time to avoid this and not even get into the position. Plus, you're not wasting time on viewings, money, and all that stuff. You just stop right now. Now, it doesn't have to be brain science, but what we're trying to do is just ascertain if there's certain red flags or if it's a good fit. I tell you what, if you want a copy of my pre-viewing questionnaire that we ask all of our prospective tenants, then comment below, hit the like button, and I will make sure I get a copy over to you, okay? I got you covered. So next, you've done this questionnaire. It feels like a really good fit. You do the viewing and they say yes, okay? Which is great. So what happens from here? Well, the first thing I do is I take holding rent. Not a fee, because there is a tenant fee ban, but I take holding rent, which will be deducted from the first month's rent, just to make sure that they are serious. Once again, no point doing loads of references and you spending your money for them to just pull out. Once you've done that, you now need to decide whether you're going to do the referencing and the vetting, whether you're going to outsource it to a third-party company, Open Rent and a lot of property management softwares have their own checks and stuff that you can pay 25, 30, 40 pound per tenant and then they deal with it. And the third option is if you're using an agent, then you could potentially get them to do the referencing. So you could find a tenant, hand the lead over to the agent, get them to do the vetting and the tenancy, and then the tenant then would come in and move into your property. Now, if you're going to use a third party, you need to make sure that they're being thorough and they're not just getting a couple of references, because let's face it, if a tenant is with a landlord and they're a bad tenant and the landlord wants to get rid, the landlord will, they'll give you a great reference for this tenant because they want to get rid of them, but then you're lumbered with them, all right? Now, If you decide not to outsource it and to do it yourself, it's going to take a little bit of time for you to master this stuff. And I highly recommend you do lots of due diligence beyond this video. But the first thing you're going to want to do is do right to rent checks. And that means that whoever the tenant is has the right to rent in the UK. And the government have a great website that will talk you through it. It's actually against the law to only check people that you think are not from the UK. You need to check everyone. And if they are coming from internationally, it's a little bit of a complicated process because it's tough to get this until they've got their visa or their job application or their student status. But you go on the government website, they'll give you a code, and that means you're good to go. The second thing, which is connected to the first, is you're going to want to make sure that you've got photo ID, driver's license, passport, birth certificate, or whatever from your tenant. So then you move on and it becomes more about their affordability. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you get 3 months bank statements from your tenant, okay, showing the income coming in from their employer. Now, typically in traditional letting agents, the affordability is 36x. So that means that if your rent is £1,000 per month, you want that tenant to be earning £36,000 per year salary, which if you do the math, you'll be able to work out what that means per month, and you'll be able to cross-reference that on the 3 months statements. Now, due to HMOs being all bills included, sometimes I go down to 30x because they're not going to have as many other expenses. Next is the dreaded credit check. Now, I've got mixed views with this, to be honest with you, because part of me thinks that due to COVID and, you know, life being tough, you know, quite a lot of people have got marks on their credit these days. So I'm not sure if it's a complete deal breaker if somebody did, you know, have a bad one a few years back, or when they were young, or when they once missed a phone bill or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But it is good practice to conduct a credit check. And once again, there are some really good agencies that you can go on there, put information, and they of course will do it. Top tip, you're noticing here that you're going to be handling quite a lot of confidential information. This is why you need to be a member of the ICO, and you need to follow, okay, protocol for handling this data confidentially and in line with data protection rules. I almost forgot. So what happens if your potential tenant is self-employed, doesn't have pay slips, and doesn't have consistent income? Well, you're going to want to look at their bank statements and see and make a judgment call of what their average income is and make sure that it's within line. Failing that, if any tenant doesn't meet your affordability checks, you then potentially could ask for a guarantor and somebody else, a family member, etc., that could actually guarantee the rent. So if they don't pay, you can then, you know, proceed to claim the money from the guarantor. So this is very common with student tenancies where they don't have jobs, and it's ideal to have a guarantor. Although, personally, as long as I can see a student loan and I know that they're going to get the money, sometimes we do accept that as well. So you're probably noticing, you know, one size doesn't fit all. So no matter what checks you do, it's ultimately your decision, okay? And you've got to follow your gut. And lastly, if you want to go the extra mile, fraud prevention check could be a great thing to do. As I discussed earlier, references are a funny old game. As long as I can verify their employment and, you know, landlords references, yeah, have a go, but I don't know what much they stand for. But the key thing is going to be the points I mentioned previously, and of course your gut. And top tip, it's not just about all those checks that I've mentioned, but you also need to ensure that the tenant's compatible with the house and the tenant is compatible with the other tenants in the house. So don't be afraid to vet them in terms of asking tricky questions. What do you not want in the house? Are there anything, you know, any things that are going to really rub you up the wrong way that might mean this house isn't suitable? Are there anything that you do that's not going to be fit for some houses? How do you get on when you're living with a smoker? You know, you're working nights. These guys are up early at 6 a.m. having a shower and making breakfast. Is that going to be an issue? But if you do all those things, 99% of the time, you're going to have a great tenant they're going to pay consistent cash flow, and you're going to be in a great place. Now, naturally, sometimes people don't pay rent. Sometimes people are going to be problem tenants. And that's when it's important to make sure that you've signed the right tenancy agreement, okay? And that you've served the correct documents prior to them moving in. If you would like a video of me going through those documents, comment below, okay? Just let me know, okay? Just say, hey, Sai, yeah, can you do the video on the documents we need to serve? And I'll do a special piece of content. So that's it from me. Thanks for the support. Keep commenting, keep liking, keep subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.